All right. So today we're going to talk about inequalities. All right. So I gotta bring something up here. So let's go back to high school or even middle school. So let's say I have a number line. Actually, I gotta bring this number line down a little more. Okay. So let's say that we're asked to graph the result of x is less than 6. Okay? So back in high school, what you would do is saying, okay, so here's 6, right? And what you would do is you would say, okay, so this is an open circle, and I'm going to point this to the left. And the reason why you did that is because everything to the left of 6 is going to be less than 6. Okay? And then the reason why you use a circle is because the number 6 itself is not part of the solution because 6 is not less than 6. But 5.999999999999999 is less than 6, right? So you got to include that. So that's why it's an open circle. Okay? And also in high school, if this was given as x is greater than or equal to 6, then you will have a closed circle, and you would point to the right, right? So because it's a closed circle, because 6 is greater than or equal to 6, is actually equal to 6, that's why it's a closed circle, because I got to include 6. Well, now in college, we apparently decided to change that. So I apologize to you. I don't know why we changed it, but we decided to change it. You're like, why? Well, sorry, dude. So instead of open circles, we're going to use a parentheses. And the parentheses is going to open towards where you want to point it. So in this case, I'm going to have a parentheses and then use my arrow outward. And for the closed circle, oops. Wow, these lines are not very straight. There we go. And then for the closed circle, we're going to use a square bracket and then use the arrow. So that is what you're going to have to learn now. Okay? So let me put it back together. Oh, let me put it together here. So open circle, parentheses, closed circle, square brackets. Okay? So that is what you need to know. All right? Now, the other thing you need to know or recall is this. Number one, you can solve these. So solve them the same way as an equation. Here, let me bring this down here. Except if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. Okay? So, Okay? So hopefully that will kind of get the point across. All right? So when you solve them, you're going to solve it the same way as the equations, except if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. Okay? So let's say, for example, ooh, I can't start with that. That one. Wow, I can't start with that one either. Yeah, I'll start with that one. Okay, so here we go. Example. Let's say I have 2x plus 5 is greater than x plus 19. Okay? So I gotta get the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. Okay? So what do I want to do? So the way I look at it is this. I'm always interested about the x. Okay? Because my goal is to always get a positive x. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's left side or right side. I just want to get the x to be positive. Okay? So the first thing I would do is subtract the x from both sides. What do I have? I have x plus 5 is greater than 19. Then I'll subtract by 5. Now notice I have not yet multiplied or divided by negative. So I got x is greater than 14. Okay? Now, some of you guys are going to get concerned because what if the x was on the right side, right? This is the same as if it was 14 less than x, okay? So if you look at this, it's kind of like the mirror image. Well, at least this part, okay? At least this part is, all right? It's like the mirror image. Notice how remember how they say, when you mark these signs, it's like the fish eating, or the shark eating the bigger fish, right? So if you notice that the open part of the mouth is still towards the X, okay? So these two are the same thing, right? So in case if you do only get that, then just flip it over and you get that, okay? All right, so we now have to graph this. And the reason why we have to graph this is because there is multiple answers, okay? There's multiple answers. So here's 14. Is this a parentheses or a square bracket? That's right, it's a parentheses. Awesome. Pointing left or pointing to the right, I want x's that are greater than 14. So it's going to be parentheses and pointed to the right. And yes, if it was this, it would still be the same exact graph, okay? All right, so what if I have numbers on both sides, like an interval? Oh, they don't have you solving those? Dang it. They don't. There's only a graph, so I could have started with this. So for example, what if they gave you this? I want you guys to understand something. There's actually two inequalities in here, okay? One says that negative 8 is less than or equal to y, and the other, which is y is less than negative 1, okay? So if I wanted to write the red here into the y being on the left side, again, mirror image, so I'll say y, y, and the mouth is eating the y, negative 8. And y is less than negative 1, okay? So you could do it that way, okay? So when I graph this, now I gotta write down two numbers, a negative 8, which is a smaller number, and a negative 1. Okay? So, I want you to understand this, however. Notice where those inequalities came from. Okay? So here's the way I look at it. If you didn't look at the red and the blue, and just looked at the black, the given, at -8, it's going to be a closed circle, which means it's going to be a square bracket. At -1, it's going to be an open circle, so that means that's going to be a parentheses. And then I would connect my line. Okay? So there you go. Now back in the day, you would have done it this way. Oop. We just done it that way. Okay? So that's back in the day, but we use parentheses and bracket these days. Okay? But if you get confused with just the given equation and you want to break it up, you can, because if you just did the red, okay, if you just did the red, then you would go, okay, it's a square bracket and it's pointing to the right because the stuff to the right is going to be greater than -8. So you have done that, okay? And then with the blue, you're like, okay, the -1 is going to be parentheses, so and it's going to be pointing to the left because everything to the left is less than -1. So you would have pointed this way, which really, since they are meeting each other, come on. That's the reason why that would be there. Okay? I hope that helps you. All right. Let's see what else is difficult in here so that I can help you out. All right. So over here. So you guys are going to get caught up on a couple of things here. So let's say this problem here is greater than 2 minus 2x. So what you are used to is that you're used to getting the variables on the left-hand side. Great, it's fine, okay? But again, when I was doing the first one, I told you that my whole thing is always to get the x to be positive. That's the way I like to do it. So let's say that your goal is to get the x on the left-hand side, right? Because when the x is on the left-hand side, you know which way to point the arrow. So when I look at this, same idea. But you want it on the left-hand side, so let's do the same thing. So in other words, I want to add the 2x over. What happens? Well, I get 9 minus x is greater than 2. Then I got to subtract the 9. Boom. There we go. And then I'll have negative x is greater than -7. So I have to multiply or divide by -1 here. So guess what happens? X is now going to be less than +7. So notice the change on the inequality. It went from greater than to less than, okay? Because I divided by a negative. Only because I divided by a negative, okay? So when I graph this, so the graphing, I'm pretty sure it's pretty cake for you guys, which is great. So there's 7. This is an open circle, so that means we use parentheses. And then, boom, done. Okay? Alrighty. Let me see what else is there. I think with the knowledge of solving for equations and knowing the fact that you have to flip the inequality when you multiply or divide by a negative, I think you're ready to go. So if you have any questions, let me know.